Hi everyone, welcome back to Beautiful British English. My name is Paul and today I'm going to talk to you about what vocabulary you need to be learning. Welcome back. So, what vocabulary should you learn so you can speak English fluently? That is a question that lots of people ask me all the time. So, let me give you an answer to that question. But before I give you an answer to that question, I want to take a look at some interesting statistics relating to vocabulary. Okay, so what this lesson is all about is what vocabulary do you need to learn? So let's take a look first of all at how many words there are in the English language. Now this is not easy to be very precise with because I don't think anybody has actually counted every single word that is used in the English language. And there are always more and more words being created and used every day. But there are some places we can go to for reference. So, for example, the Oxford English Dictionary, the latest version of the Oxford English Dictionary has 171,476 words. So that's an awful lot of words. Another dictionary, and you can Google these if you're not sure about these. Another dictionary, Webster's, their dictionary has 470,000 words. So you can see there's a very big difference, 171 to 470. It's a very, very big difference in the number of words. Now there are some estimates that there are 1 million plus words. That's a 1 with 6 zeros in English. More than 1 million words in English, but who knows? Yeah. But one thing I can tell you is that it's impossible for you and me to learn every single word in English. Okay? That's an impossible task. So you cannot learn every single word. So how many words do you need to speak a language fluently? Now, scientists and researchers can give us some very, very specific numbers here. Okay, so if you have 1,000 words, and not just any 1,000 words, but we'll come to these words in a second. So 1,000 words in English will allow you to communicate up to 80% of what you need. Okay, another 2,000 words, so 3,000 in total, will get you to close to 95%. And all you need in your active vocabulary to allow you to communicate fluently is somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 words. More than 3,000 words I think is really difficult to hold in your active vocabulary. Yeah. You need at least 1,000 words in any language to be able to communicate effectively. Like I said, 1,000 words can cover or will cover about 80% of all communication. 3,000 words will cover all but the smallest amount, so up to 95% of all communication with just 3,000 words. So that's not an awful lot of words for you to learn. Now, so that's your active vocabulary, but we also do have what we call passive vocabulary. Passive vocabulary are words that we know, we're familiar with, but we do not use them on a regular basis. You may not use these words for years and years and years and years, but you're aware that this word exists and you're aware of the understanding of these words. Now, researchers suggest that the average adult human has somewhere between 20 and 30,000 passive words to call upon when required. Yeah? We're not going to worry about passive right now. Forget about passive. We are going to worry about active vocabulary. So we're going to be talking about somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 words that you need to have in your active vocabulary to become a fluent English speaker. So let's talk now about the words that you need to learn. So just to quickly recap, So today we are discussing what we call our active vocabulary, and your active vocabulary needs to be somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 words. Okay? Somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 will allow you to communicate fluently and effectively in the English language. Okay? Now, the words that you need to learn depend upon your circumstances or your situation and what you want to talk about or what your purpose of learning English is. Now, here are just some ideas or some areas or some reasons why people are learning English. It might be for your work, it might be because you need English for your studies, it might be because you want to speak English with at home with your wife and your children. One of your hobbies might require the language, or you might want to use English for travel. So when you are deciding what words you want to learn or what words you need to learn, you have to think about the circumstances where you will be using English. Because if you're going to learn 3,000 words, okay, and only 3,000 words, then the words that you need to use at work to describe your job and to communicate with work colleagues or clients are very different to the words that you would need to talk about your hobbies, or very different to the words you would need if you are traveling on holiday and using English. Yeah? So the words that you need depend upon why you are learning English and under which circumstances you intend to use English. Now, let me just talk a bit more about these 3,000 words, okay? For example, let me try and give you a good example, okay? So right now I am quite old, and I spend a lot of my time, most of my time, talking about English and teaching and things like this, okay? But 25, 30 years ago, I didn't speak about the English language in the same way. So my vocabulary has changed. I probably still only have about 3,000 words in my active vocabulary, but the words I use today are very different from the words I used in the past. So your active vocabulary is not static. Your active vocabulary should be constantly changing. As your life changes and you wish to talk about different things, you add new words to your active vocabulary and you lose some words from your active vocabulary. So it's constantly changing. And that is an important thing to remember, because you can't just learn 3,000 words and go, well, hey, it's not that easy. The 3,000 words that you use, say in this situation, are very different from the 3,000 words you probably have to use in this situation. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So you might have to learn different words to talk about your work, different words when you are at home with your family and your children, completely different words to talk about your hobbies. Yeah? And it depends, you know, what you're talking about as to what words do I need to learn. Now, a big group of you will be wondering, well, I'm studying for an IELTS exam or a Cambridge exam or one of the other English exams. What vocabulary do I need? And we're going to come to that in just a second. So let me very briefly speak to you IELTS students. Now this advice is not just for IELTS but for anybody who's taking an English speaking exam. So in terms of the vocabulary for IELTS, Cambridge, GMAT, whatever exam you're taking, okay, the focus is you, okay? The focus is you, okay? That's an important thing for you to understand. The focus is you. So the kinds of vocabulary, the kind of things that you need to be able to think not just think about, but also talk about it and discuss, are things like your home life, things that you do on a regular basis, things you like, things you dislike, but also some other technical vocabulary, either related to your work or what you're studying, because you'll always need to talk a little bit about perhaps your job or what you're studying. Yeah. So the focus is on you. You will be asked to talk about you. Okay. So you are the expert on you. Yeah. So you are going to have to talk about all of the things that are related or that relate to you. Now, if you understand what I mean by that, that's great. But if you don't, let me just briefly explain. In your native language, if I was to ask you to talk about any subject in your native language, you would be able to do it very, very fluently, no matter what subject. Okay? It might be it might be a subject that you're not very familiar with. It might be a subject you don't really know anything about. But in your native language, you would be able to communicate that information to me. And if I asked you about your home life or your hobbies, or whether you like going to the cinema and things like that, in your native language, you would very easily be able to communicate that information to me. And that is the same vocabulary that you need in English. Yeah? All of those things about your life, things that you like, things that you dislike, why you like them, why you dislike them, why you do things, why you choose this rather than this. All of that vocabulary is what you need. So you need to start thinking about, what do you talk about and what do you discuss with your friends and with your family on a regular basis, and learn how to say all of those things in English. Yeah, it's very, very simple. Yeah, in an IELTS exam, you are the focus. The examiner wants you to answer questions all about you. Now, for everybody else who isn't preparing for an IELTS exam, I just want to give you some advice on how to decide which vocabulary is important for you to learn. So let's just take the example of unity of work. You perhaps want to be using your English to communicate at work. Right. So what I want you guys to do in your native language is start asking yourself some questions. Some very simple questions like, what do I do? Okay, why do I do it? How do I do it? And use our other questioning words like where, when and who, etc. to ask yourself some very basic questions about your work. And this could be about your work, but it could be about your hobbies or your family. Just ask yourself some questions in your native language, okay? What, why, where, when and how. And you can answer these questions in your native language. Yeah, so that's very easy. Then what I want you to do is ask yourself, can you answer the same question in English? Okay, so related to your work, there might be some technical vocabulary that you know exactly what it means in your native language, but you don't know how to translate it into English. Then you need to sort of take your vocabulary or the way you say something in your native language and translate it into English. And that will give you more vocabulary that you need to help you describe your work. Yeah? Specifically, what do I do? Well, I would say, well, I am an English teacher. And then I would try and translate, I am an English teacher, into, let's say, French or Japanese, whichever language I was learning. And that will give me the vocabulary I need to start talking about my work. Yeah? So ask yourself these questions, or questions similar to these, in your native language. Answer them in your native language. Write the answers down if that helps you, and then translate. You can use a dictionary, a physical actual dictionary, an online dictionary. You can use Google Translate if you want to. Yeah? And All of these resources will give you the vocabulary that you need to learn to help you describe the things that you want to talk about. Okay? I hope this has been an interesting lesson for you guys. I hope I haven't confused you too much. If I have, drop me a message and I will do my best to help you. I don't mind spending time helping you individually decide what vocabulary is important for you to learn. Okay. I'm going to do another video to follow this one about certain vocabularies that I think are important to learn, but that's going to follow after this. In the meantime, just do this little exercise. Ask yourself these questions and lots of other questions in your native language. Write down the answers in your native language, translate them into English, and there is your vocabulary that you need to start adding to your active vocabulary.